lost my decades-long relationship. My other relationships were all affected negatively by the impact of the change in my roles, really, not me, but the change in my roles, no longer being that capable, hardworking doctor that is paying all the bills and making everything happen. And then I lost my financial security. I had to declare bankruptcy after my partner left. And that led me down a bit of a rabbit hole. And my beautiful mother came to visit me. I was in an inpatient ward, really feeling very ordinary and suicidal again in 2017. My mother came to visit me and she sat me down and she said, "Jo, look, I know you can do anything and you've proven it. So you can find a way back from this. There's something else you can do. But in the meantime, I think it'd be a really good idea if you got yourself an assistance dog." What are you talking about? She had done a whole lot of research. She'd spoken to a GP about how we go about it. She'd spoken to organisations and she presented me with a plan. And that, even before Benni came along, that gave me meaning. It gave me purpose. It gave me something to look forward to in an otherwise fairly dark tunnel of misery.
Welcome to Ignite and Write, where we uncover powerful stories and meet the people courageous enough to tell them. I'm your host, ghostwriter and author mentor, Roxanne McCarty-O'Kane. In this space, we shine a light on writers from all walks of life. Each episode offers honest conversations designed to inspire, educate, and remind us that every story has the potential to create connection and transformation. Because here at Ignite and Write, we believe stories don't just fill pages, they change lives.
Today's guest is a woman whose life took an unexpected turn and whose remarkable story of resilience, healing, and hope has now become her debut memoir. Dr. Jodi-Maree Cronin is a medical doctor, speaker, and advocate who spent years caring for other people before finding herself navigating her own profound health and mental health challenges. In her memoir, Benni, The Best Medicine Has Paws, she shares the deeply personal journey that followed, including a battle with PTSD and the life-changing bond that she formed with her assistance dog, the aptly named Benni. With honesty, vulnerability, and heart, Jodi explores what it means to rebuild your life when everything you once knew had been stripped away, and how healing can sometimes arrive on 4 paws. Her story is a powerful reminder that strength isn't about never failing. It's about finding the courage to keep moving forward. Not content to tread the normal path of most aspiring first-time authors, Jodi released not 1, but 3 books at the same time. Her memoir was accompanied by the first 2 books in her Being Benni children's series that is continuing to expand. And when she's not working alongside people with her precious puppies in her P3 Play, Pause psychotherapy business, she is working with families and organisations to train their own assistance dogs with her signature method that puts the dog's needs at the forefront. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, Jodi. Very excited to have you.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, and that was really nice. Thank you, Roxy. What a lovely introduction.
I try my best. Now, before we jump into what's inside the covers of your amazing memoir, I'd love for you to tap into sharing the moment when you realised that your life and everything that you'd experienced actually belonged inside the pages of a book, because I love uncovering what that moment of inspiration looks like for people.
Well, it was a very personal moment of inspiration, and it really occurred as a result of my father and mother passing within 4 months of one another. The care of my parents while they were dying and very unwell, I found to be an incredible privilege in life. At the end of all of that, my mother left me a letter, and I'd spoken about writing a book, and like many of you, I'm sure, I had it all in my head. It was, one day I'm going to write this wonderful book. And it just never came to pass. And I came to learn that was probably because now is the right time for that book to be written. And my mother left me an instruction, and you listen to your mother even beyond the grave. So she left me an instruction that I needed to immortalise the dogs and the incredible impact that they had on both of our lives. And I felt an overwhelming urge to then put those experiences down on paper and to share them with others so that the healing that occurred and the potential for healing could be shared with other people.
Absolutely. And Benni is definitely at the core of your memoir, sort of like the hero, if you like. It's Benni that comes in and saves the day. So I'd love to give you an opportunity to share, when it was that Benni arrived in your life and touch on that profound impact that she's had on you.
Okay, so to do that, there needs to be a little bit of context.
Absolutely. You have free reign.
There's a bit of a story. When I was young, I grew up in a fairly difficult household with social disadvantage and domestic violence a daily part of my life. As I grew older, I really was led to believe, and I firmly believed, that I could not do anything different other than perhaps a labourer role, that I would never be skilled or qualified in anything. And that came from my upbringing and the rhetoric around what I could or couldn't do or what I was capable of. And I totally believe that. That's something that I challenged deeply later in life. And so as I grew older, I thought that these beliefs aren't mine. They don't belong to me. It doesn't feel comfortable. I'm sure I can do something else. So after leaving school at 14, I went back to school as an adult to help both my children with their homework. That was the premise upon which I went back to school, because I really felt that an uneducated mother was going to lead to uneducated children. So I felt the responsibility very heavily. And I thought, my father actually taught me, apart from the difficulty with him, he actually also taught me that you can do anything you set your mind to. Like, he made things happen that other people would find impossible. He could manufacture things out of thin air. He was a very talented man, a very difficult man, but a very talented man. And so I just thought, well, if hard work can overcome so many things, then perhaps hard work can overcome stupid, which is what I had been led to believe I was. So that led me down the road of going back to school and then eventually to university and studying medicine. I graduated from medicine, and the weight of all of those doubts in myself was lifted when I graduated from medicine. I never revisited that version of myself. I had put her to sleep. That version, that incapable, unable to complete anything, that version had gone. So as a very capable and skilled doctor, I had an insatiable thirst for knowledge. I really wanted to learn. I'm like, oh, this brain actually works. Let's use it for good, not for evil. And so I started really using my brain to my best capability. I ended up managing an area health service. I was in several managerial style roles or leadership style roles. And I was really enjoying my work. Unfortunately, it wasn't that good for me and my health. There's a lot of trauma as a first responder. And I think because I had trauma as a child as well, the combination of the two just led to a tipping point. And one day I just reached that invisible edge. It nearly took me from this world. Like, I really did not think I was going to survive that. I had an episode of severe depression and attempted suicide in 2014. I got back on the horse just like my father had taught me, got back to work and became a capable doctor again, and then came to realise that actually I had a use-by date in medicine and that I had reached it. When I came to that realisation, it was a fairly harsh reality that followed. It was, Chicken Little, the sky really did fall in. I lost my decades-long relationship. My other relationships were all affected negatively by the impact of the change in my roles, really, not me, but the change in my roles, no longer being that capable, hardworking doctor that is paying all the bills and making everything happen. The people around me found that very, very difficult. It was a very hard thing for the people around me to see and watch. And then I lost my financial security. I had to declare bankruptcy after my partner left. And that led me down a bit of a rabbit hole. And my beautiful mother came to visit me. I was in an inpatient ward, really feeling very ordinary and suicidal again in 2017. My mother came to visit me and she sat me down and she said, "Jo, look, I know you can do anything. And you've proven it. So you can find a way back from this. There's something else you can do. But in the meantime, I think it'd be a really good idea if you got yourself an assistance dog." What are you talking about? But she brought information and she had done a whole lot of research. She'd spoken to a GP about how we go about it. She'd spoken to organisations and she presented me with a plan, and that even before Benni came along, that gave me meaning, it gave me purpose, it gave me something to look forward to in an otherwise fairly dark tunnel of misery. And in that process, I had to decide which breed, whether it was going to be a male or a female, what I was going to do to train this dog. And then along came Benni, who stole my heart the day I met her. Actually, before that, they sent me a picture of the dogs, and I was supposed to get the male dog, and I pointed one out to Mum because it had a big black spot on its side. I said, "I want that one," and I found out that I wasn't getting that one. I was getting the male. And 2 weeks before Benni was due to come and live with me, or the other dog was due to come to live with me, the breeder said that, "Look, something's happened with the temperament of the male. I no longer think he's appropriate. So I'm going to give you a female instead." And I had no idea which female. And when she arrived, she was the one with the big spot. And I just so totally meant to be together. And then her, of course, wonderful antics and challenging behaviour as a puppy just created joy where there had been none for a while. It created a much needed distraction, and I needed to think. I needed to figure out how I was going to train this dog to get to the other side and have an accredited assistance dog. So that's the story that came into my life.
Excellent. And one of my favorite stories of your book is, and you mentioned some antics, but the particular one where you were having, a really rough time, finding it hard to get out of the house, like really just in this bubble. And Benni decided that she needed to bring a bit of a spark to your life. I don't know if that was her intention, but just went and grabbed your underwear, took them outside and started tossing them around, and you were having to try and chase her to collect the underwear. But it's just little things like that really, show that really strong bond that she had with you, that she knew that was what you needed at that point in time.
Yes, yeah, and she still does that. If you're getting frustrated with something, or if you're so busy that you don't have time to stop and rest and regulate, she will just interrupt you with a behaviour that she never does. Like, it'll be something completely out of the ordinary. That's her way of going, "No, we have to be in the moment here. You need to stop." So it's an alert of sorts. And other people would probably think it to be pure bad behaviour, but it's not. Benni really is intelligent enough to figure out what will distract me, because normal stuff is not going to distract me. But her antics definitely do. And she still sometimes steals my underwear.
Yeah. Old habits and all, Yeah, excellent. And coming from a medical background, what I found really interesting about reading your story is obviously you've had all this training, all this years of practice in the medical setting, but Benni almost forced you to look at healing from a whole other perspective. I'd love your insights into that.
Completely different, and I think that it demonstrated to me that healing can happen when you're not looking. And that it happens when you have what I call relational safety. So I've come to understand it. Like, once I started to go, why do I feel better because the dog steals my underwear? What about Training this dog is making me feel so much better. I started to, as I have a curious mind, delve into the neuroscience behind all of that. And what is the reason that this is making me feel better? How am I recovering, in part because of the relationship with this dog? And I came to understand that that's about having relational safety. And when you've grown up with abuse of any kind, the first thing that is compromised is your safety in relationship, because somebody somewhere along the way that you were supposed to be able to trust broke that trust. And something that dogs have is just that there's this magic ability to be in the moment. And they're not just in the moment. They are absolutely unconditionally accepting of you in the moment. So it didn't matter to Benni if I had a dark day and I couldn't get out of bed. I call them lost days. It didn't matter to her. She still turned up with the same love, the same affection, and the same ability to distract me as she did the day before when I was giving her all the love in the world and treats and taking her for walks. So she turns up as her authentic self all the time. And it just taught me so much about what underpins healing. And I think I use that in my day-to-day practice now all the time. What underpins healing is safety in relationship. And to have safety in relationship, you must be unconditionally accepted as who you are. And I think that if you talk about Rogerian therapeutics, that's the whole basis of that theory. So having a person-centered approach, you have to first have unconditional positive regard for the person. And that's something that I bring into my practice with children as well, and adults that have had some kind of trauma journey. They just the same. They need that safety in relationships. So that's where I start. That's kind of the groundwork. It's accepting someone. I think it's the biggest gift. And my father's death taught me this, because when he died, I don't know why or how, but I 100% accepted him for who he was. And I think it's the greatest gift you can give to anyone. And I was able to look after him with the same compassion and care that I looked after my mother, who I had a great relationship with. Wasn't always great, but as an adult, it absolutely was. And I was able to bring the same compassion and care. And I think that's about that, having that authenticity that came from my relationship with Benni, and unconditionally accepting people for who they are. If somebody's difficult, you can't change that about them. And why would you want to? Because it makes them a different person. So from my perspective, I'm into we accept them for who they are and we let that go. And that's what Benni did for me. And if I had not had that, my healing journey would have taken a lot longer, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. What an amazing gift that came from a simple suggestion. Isn't it funny how these things, like these little breadcrumbs, are laid for us in life, and that one suggestion from your mum ended up being a literal life changer and a lifesaver for you as well.
Yeah, she had some really good advice. There's a few of those, but that was I think the best piece of advice I ever got. And I truly do not think I'd have survived it without Benni. Without that relationship, without that healing, I'm not sure that I'd have survived that period in my life, because it didn't get better after I got Benni. Like, life didn't get better for a long time after I got Benni. And then Benni had illnesses of her own. She developed epilepsy. So the challenges continued. But when you've got this constant of unconditional acceptance and presence and awareness, when you've got that constantly by your side, and I talk about this in the book, that sometimes you don't need advice. You don't need somebody to show you what to do. You just need somebody to stand next to you in the darkness. You just need to not be alone through that difficulty. And that's what I try to do for my clients now. I just try to be the person who stands next to them. I don't have to have all the answers. I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to have, this is how you should get yourself out of it. I don't need to give advice. Sometimes we just need somebody to be next to us. And that's what Benni did for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Such beautiful words. I'm feeling all warm and fuzzy. Thanks, Jodie. I'm sure everyone watching this back is as well. I wanted to touch on relationships because you've mentioned in your backstory and including what led up to meeting Benni. All of this is included in the book, by the way, in much greater detail. But relationships have been at the core of your story. And I'm curious for you to share your insights because you, as you said, you have a curious mind. And one thing I noticed in your writing process is you really took a deep dive into everything and explored everything as you were writing. And obviously how to sensitively share your experiences of relationships and also, respect the wishes of other people that you're writing about. I know that is often a very big challenge for people who are writing memoirs or stories that involve other people. So I'd love for you to share the gems that you uncovered while you were navigating that process with your own memoir.
Yes, look, that was one of the hardest parts of the process, because when you've experienced a trauma, the people alongside you experience trauma as well, and it's not just yours. It does belong to the collective, the people who stood by you, the people who supported you, and the people who couldn't, who didn't have the strength to. Those people all experienced hardship as a result of my trauma, my personal trauma, and that was difficult. So it was difficult for me to put those things on the page, but I again felt that coming back to one of the biggest lessons for me is to be in alignment with your values. And so my values heavily rely on compassion and authenticity. And so I needed to be compassionate for the people. I needed to show compassion for the people, other people involved that might experience something from reading my book. And I also needed to authentically show up without treading on the rights of someone else. So that was a very delicate process, and I went to probably a little bit more extreme than most to make sure that the people around me were not going to be significantly or unnecessarily harmed by me publishing my book. And one of those processes was releasing a copy to each of them, each of the people who, including the ones that I knew would have nothing but negative feedback. But they had just as much a right to understand what's going out there and I guess have their say about how they may or may not be portrayed. So I think that was a really important process. For me, that was about being able to authentically put my book out there, and not then worry about doing harm to someone else. So, I think I went a little bit further than most, and then I did edit based on the feedback from several of those people, and I also got legal advice in the end, just to make sure that not only was I doing the right thing emotionally to protect the people that I really care about, but also the right thing legally by them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And how did you feel knowing, excuse me, how did you feel knowing that you had taken all of those steps? Like, and when it came time to publish, did you feel a lot more confident around your book, knowing that you had covered all your bases and spoken to all the right people before Benni was out there in the world?
Absolutely. I think that I would have really worried about some form of backlash or harm, probably more harm than backlash, particularly with family members, if I'd have just put it out there and not thought about those things. And it's not something that you necessarily have to do, but I felt that ethically it was the right thing to do. And it also, for me, it was the right thing to do so that I didn't have any anxiety once the book was out there. I knew that everybody who needed to have a say and needed to have something, edited out or a name change or a place change so that their identity was protected, that was all done. And it was all done before the book came out. And so by the time I got to my book launch, I was just so excited because I knew now that this is my story that's been vetted by everybody who matters. It's not upsetting anybody. It's really out there to send a positive message of hope. And I hope now that I can get that out to as many people as possible. And I now feel totally comfortable doing that.
Absolutely. And one of the core things that I drill into everyone who comes through Ignite and Write is to really think about the ideal reader and who the book is for. So I'd love for you to share who, when you were sitting down to write and you were crunching through those chapters, who did you picture in mind that this book was for, that you wanted to impart these amazing messages for?
Really, that's a different version of myself. So at each stage in my life, I feel like I've lived different lives. So I feel like pre-medicine, I was this young girl with absolutely no self-confidence, no self-esteem. I didn't believe I was ever going to make anything of myself. I'd left school before I turned 14. I had no education and no hope for the future. So that's one version of me. Somewhere in there is the tiny child with domestic violence and not being able to trust others. And then as a young adult, there's the capable mum and the capable young person who thinks that, now I'm studying, everything's great, it's all going to be good. And, you have this idea that happiness is what will be at the end of that tunnel. You do all of this working towards something. I'm going to achieve this. I'm going to achieve that. And at the end of that, I'll be happy. When I go for this holiday, I'll be happy. When I do this, I'll be happy. When I have the house and the white picket fence, I'll be happy. And I've come to realize that's not where happiness lives. Happiness doesn't live at a destination or an achievement. Happiness lives in here. And what I've come to learn is that that's about peace, not about happiness. Peace is what breeds joy. So yeah, I think my ideal reader was somebody just like me at each of those stages in life. So each time I was writing something, I was thinking about, a 14-year-old Jodi who has left school and doesn't think there's any hope for their life. And I see these clients all the time. These are clients I see. So I'm seeing my clients and I'm seeing myself in these people. And then the young mum, who's not quite sure what she's going to do with herself, but feels the pressure to do something to improve the outcome for her children, so it's not going to end up the same. And then, the successful person where the whole world falls apart. What do I do now? And how to bridge that gap. So at each stage, I think I was looking across from a different version of myself and hoping that if that person is out there, that I can reach them and help them to understand that no matter how bad the situation, there is hope, and we can get to the other side. Sometimes you just need it to be we, not just you. So sometimes you just need somebody to help you across that bridge.
Absolutely. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a human. That's what we learn in your book.
Absolutely.
Amazing. All right. And as someone who's trained, obviously, that background in science and medicine, I work with a lot of people who struggle to move from that. We call it academic speak. So writing reports, writing, for academic journals, writing for exams. It's a very different style of writing to writing a memoir. And I absolutely love the way you were able to switch that voice over and start to let that natural storytelling come through. But I know that that's not always just as simple as flicking a switch. I'd love for you to share what that process looked like for you and how you were able to sink into that more natural Jodi storytelling voice in your book.
That was very difficult because I am used to academic writing. So also, putting the references in everywhere. So it was very difficult to switch that part of me off. But I think there's a huge difference between academic writing and writing from the heart. And the difference, for me, I started to understand that difference when I decided that a poem would start each chapter. So that set the tone for how I would write each chapter. And academic writing asks the question, how can I support this fact? But writing from the heart asks the question, how can I express this truth? So it's a very different question. And by nature, then the way you answer it has to be different. And for me, by writing those poems at the beginning of the chapter, that kept me grounded in the conversational voice that I wanted to have in writing the book. And I didn't want to come across, it's very difficult to reach people who don't think that they have capability. If you only ever express yourself as somebody who's capable, like when you express yourself as somebody who's academic, for instance, you're never going to reach the person who's empathic. That's going to skip that person. So I wanted people to be able to engage and relate, and I wanted it to be like I think part of that was advice that you gave me around having a conversation. And so when I wrote the book, I did it all voice to text and then laboriously fixed all the errors because that was how I kept myself conversational instead of academic.
Yeah, it's so awesome when you can find a strategy that works like that. Instead of butting your head against a brick wall trying to do it the typing way, you quickly realize that that was the way to get your most natural storytelling voice out. So yeah, I mean, yeah, we've had conversations before about the accuracy of voice to text, but Benni is proof that you can absolutely write your book that way. So kudos to you, Jodi. And it is a magnificent read, and I love the poems. I know a lot of people have given you amazing feedback on the poems because they kind of, as deep as the text goes in the book, poetry is almost like another level of depth, isn't it? Because you can dip right into that heart feeling and really get very descriptive. And I mean, it takes a lot of courage to be vulnerable and publish those. Was that an easy decision to make?
That was so hard. My poetry has only ever lived on the inside of me and inside books that are in the shed. I've hardly ever even shown people my poetry. When I first started doing some education, I had some friends at the time that I showed some poetry to, and that's the last time. So that was 25 years ago. That's the last time anybody saw any of my poetry, because my poetry is a form of complete and unscripted self-expression. So it comes from a very deep place, and often I'm inspired to write poetry at the extremes of emotion. So either when I'm really feeling very dark, so some of my poetry is really dark, or when I'm feeling really inspired, and so it's really uplifting and inspiring, hardly ever in between. So so sometimes it can be a bit confronting as well for others. And the other thing about that is interesting is that the whole book, I felt less exposed about the whole book than I did about those poems.
Wow.
So putting them out there was harder than every detail, because I'd processed all of that trauma. And as you so eloquently say, sometimes, you've got to write from the scar, not the wound. And that's what makes that a little bit easier. So none of that was a difficult thing on my system. But putting those poems out there was difficult. It was very emotional and a very difficult part of the whole process, but I felt it necessary to be that open, vulnerable, and authentic.
Absolutely. No, that's awesome. And you touched on the launch, and everyone, the launch is almost the first time I think many authors get to actually breathe and go, oh my gosh, I did it. Like there's lots of milestones along the way, obviously finishing the first draft, seeing it designed for the first time, holding that first copy in your hand. But there's something about filling a room full of people who are there to see you and to celebrate this beautiful creation that's come from the heart. I'd love for you to share what sort of environment and what sort of experience you chose to create for the launch of Benni, because I love how every single author puts their own personal flavour and their own spin on what a book launch looks like. So
yes, and I'd never been to a book launch, so I had no I had nothing to compare it to. But what I wanted more than anything else was it to be a room filled with love, authenticity, compassion, and caring people that I cared about and knew. And that's what it was to me. All of the things that I've done since then has been around marketing and getting the book out there. But that day for me was a tangible hug from the people that I cared about, and acceptance of what I'd put out there, and having them all in the same room, cheering me on was absolutely wonderful. So I made it a very intimate environment. I had a custom-made Benni dress. So Benni was in 3D on the dress, and just the people that I really cared about, that I knew cared about me. When you go through something that is life-changing, like I did, you start to understand that some people, that I think there's a saying, some people are here for a day, some people for a week, some people for a season, some people for a lifetime. And what you come to realize is the people who stood by you when the darkness came are the people who will always stand by you. And that doesn't mean that you don't still have time and love and compassion for the people who couldn't, because they did the best that they could with what they had at the time. But those are the people, so the people in one way or another who were able to hold me through that difficulty, and still see me as a functioning human being at the other end. Those are the people that I wanted there. And it was just such a room full of beautiful people and beautiful sentiment. So I really enjoyed the launch.
Absolutely. And the dress, oh my gosh, if you want to have a look at the dress, you need to go and check out Jodi's socials, because the dress was like next level, out of this world, so fabulous, created by the extremely talented Larissa Sultan. And my gosh, I really hope you get many, many more opportunities to crack that out, because it's so stunning.
Yeah, it was so beautiful. And Larissa was amazing. Like, she created something out of my imagination and put it down onto, a piece of art that I wore. It was just beautiful. And I really loved it, because unfortunately, for those of you who don't know, Benni was unable to come on the day. She had a seizure not long before the launch, so I was unable to take Benni. So I was really pleased that I'd done the dress, because I couldn't have Benni really present. And that would have been really sad if she wasn't represented. So yeah, it was a wonderful way to include Benni. And for me, a lot about that was including Mum as well. So having that 3D, wearable art dress, it was a demonstration of the journey, not necessarily just about Benni. It's the journey that led to where I was to launch the book.
Absolutely. And as you've come to realize, and many authors do, when they get to the stage that marketing is the perpetual next step. It's what happens forever, to keep your book top of mind, to make sure it's getting into the hands of the people that you wrote your book for. And Jodi, I know, because you just throw yourself into everything you do, boots and all, you've really embraced the concept of the business of authorship. So I'd love for you to share what that journey's looked like for you, what sort of new skills you're acquiring, and how you're showing up with Benni and the Being Benni children's series to spread the message far and wide.
Yeah, so this has been a challenge, because it requires putting yourself out there in a completely different way, which is public appearances, and you become the face of your book. So you're really selling the book and yourself at the same time. So it was initially a bit of a challenge to me, because I don't like the idea of selling, myself as a concept. I have completely overcome that, because it's really necessary in order to get the message out. And for me, that's what this is about. It's about getting a message out. It's about getting hope out to people who might not think they have hope or a direction. I experienced, as a medical doctor, many of the junior medical officers wanted to leave medicine, and they didn't think for a second that they would be qualified to do anything else. And so they felt entirely trapped by this whole process of achieve, 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 keep working, work more, achieve, achieve, achieve. And it became one of those things that defined me as well. There's just this perpetual need to do better, to get more, to be more. And yeah, look, I think that message is so important that I will stand on the corner. I will do it in the rain, you know, any way I can to get the message out there, and to if it helps one person, then I've done my job. That the point was to help other people who are in an equally or even sometimes worse situation, where they don't think there's any hope to come out the other side of it. You can reinvent, you can start again, and you are not defined by the external things that define you. When you change that definition to an internal, stable, values-based definition, your whole world changes, because when the sand shifts out from underneath you, you're the same. You don't change. And that's one of the gifts that this gave me, is that I now understand that no matter how much I change on the outside, it's all packaging. What is on the inside is, and people talk about this, it's a bit naff really, you know, what's on the inside is what counts. But it's so true. What's on the inside is what counts. But I would challenge people to also consider what's on the inside in terms of your values and your interpretation of the external world that you exist in is also just as important. That's what counts. It's not what somebody else says about you or how someone else judges you. You've got no control over that. None whatsoever. You have total control over how you think, feel, and react. That's what you have control over. And when your definition of yourself shifts to that internal values-based definition, it's so much more stable. Your world just doesn't shift when something changes. Your job changes, you become redundant. The economy shifts, and you know, or you lose your house because you can't afford to pay the mortgage anymore. Underneath all of that is still the raw, beautiful, unique human being that you are.
Oh my goodness, I don't know how I can follow that up. This is what I love about talking with you, Jodi, is that you're just so profound in what you say, and so intentional. And this is what really shines and comes through in your book. And if you have the time to watch any of Jodi's other interviews she's done, you always take away so many pearls of wisdom. So thank you, Jodi, for sharing that with us. And you know, you mentioned it's not, when it gets to this stage, you realize that it's not about putting yourself out there so much as it's about making the book about more than you. It's about who's this for, what's the purpose that it serves, and how can my experiences, my situation, everything I've been through to get to this point actually serve a purpose that's bigger than me. So that's where it becomes, you know, there's no ego in this. It's about how can this message, how can this experience serve someone else out there, like you said, looking for hope, or looking for some kind of inspiration to know that they're not alone. Absolutely. And that's, for me, that's why I'm still able to go on podcasts and show the face, and including the, you know, skin cancer removed. You know, leading country in the world for skin cancer, Australia. So that's why I can still turn up, because at the end of the day, I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this for someone else. I think it's great if the book's successful. Let's face it, we're never going to become millionaires off a book. Book sales are not what's going to make you rich, but there's a richness in life that you get from helping another. And this was the part of, and that's Benni talking to us. Here, Benni. This is making your presence known. Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of the part of the process that I think is really important. Yeah. We're not absolutely ourselves. We're here to make a profound difference and help someone else. And when that ability to work in a profession that helped others was taken away from me, it was really difficult to adapt. And I needed to find a way that I could still help others. And this is now the way.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. And you mentioned, and I'm a truth teller. I always say you'll never make $1 million from selling books alone. But one of the beautiful things that you've noticed already is that when you're showing up, when you're at the book markets, when you're doing the book signings, when you're talking to people about your book, then they're also curious about your businesses and how you work with dogs, and that leads into another opportunity to connect with future clients. And that's where most authors who are, let's say, using their books as a pillar for business are able to see bigger returns, because they've got a beautiful way to connect with people they wouldn't otherwise get to meet.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I've found beautiful about those market stalls, so you don't see a lot of people and you don't sell a lot of books, but what you do get to do is connect on an incredible level with the people who need to see your book at that time. And so I've had a few amazing connections, and just making people smile. I made it a challenge. Every person that goes past, let's see how many of them I can make smile today, because even that makes a difference in someone's day. It's that ability to connect. And I think authentic storytelling is just a form of connection. And if we go back and look at Indigenous cultures all over the world, storytelling is essential to the next generation and their knowledge. And that's what they do. They storytell to pass knowledge on. And that's something that I think we have almost lost the art of in modern society. And I think that this is a way to bring that art back. Authentic storytelling is a way to help healing. It's a way to transmit knowledge.
Absolutely. You're singing my song at the moment, Jodi. I'm loving all of this. So wonderful. And so I know you've been very, very generous with your time, Jodi, but I just wanted to see, because you are so full of amazing insights, and I'm dropping this question on you totally unprepared. What is one message you would love to leave our viewers with today, that they can take with them? And learn from your experience?
So if you've got a story and it's worth telling to another human being, then it's probably worth telling to more than one human being. And I think that, again, that authentic storytelling can help healing. It's not just about your story. Benni's telling us a story right now. It's not just about your story, and keeping it to yourself prevents that transmission of knowledge. What I learnt about all of that processing is that I had a degree of what I now refer to as emotional debt. And the emotional debt, the creditors come calling at some point in life. It's either going to be your health, your mental health, your well-being, or your relationships, your career. Something's going to suffer if you don't pay the ferryman for the emotional debt. And now I'm all about ways to create emotional wealth instead. And this has been one of those incredible ways, because what lived inside me has now, and I've told you this before, I think, Roxy, now has a place outside of me to exist. I no longer have to carry that load. When I put it on the page and processed it through the process of writing the book, there developed this external place for that trauma to exist. And that in itself was a catharsis and a healing part of the process. So I think that was my final toll to pay the ferryman. And now I'm all about building emotional wealth. How do we go switch from accruing debt? What are the episodes in life? So every time that you're not living to your values, every time that you compromise on a boundary, every time that you say yes when you meant no, those are all times when you're accruing this emotional debt. And the more you take on of that, the less your system can cope, and the more it shows up in other areas of your life. So as an extension of the book work and the podcasts and things, I'm starting to develop the workshops around all of that to help people to process emotional debt, to come out the other side and square up the balance sheet in life, and learn where they can find peace, which brings joy.
Amazing. And for people who want to connect in, to follow you, to connect with you, to find out more about these amazing workshops and everything else you've got in the pipeline, what's the best way for them to do that?
So I've developed a website. You asked me what I've learned. I've learned how to develop a website. And it's jodi-maree-cronin.com. So my name, which is just an I, Jodi, Maree, Maree, Cronin, CRONIN.com. And that has information about the types of ways that people can now work with me through some of those difficulties for themselves, and perhaps I can be someone who stands by their side through the darkness and get to the other side.
That's amazing. I have no doubt you will be an absolutely invaluable resource and support for anyone who's feeling called to connect with you. So thank you so much for your time, Jodi. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat with you tonight.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for putting up with Benni scratching on the door.
You're welcome anytime. I'm surprised we didn't see your gorgeous face pop up.
She tried.